Hello and welcome back to the final Scoutcast of the season as we round up this oddest of campaigns and see what we've learned when we go again in the autumn. My name is Joe.
My name's Andy.
My name's Az.
Brilliant. Wrong way round, but excellent. We got there in the end. Andy.
Oh yeah, sorry, that was my fault. My fault, sorry.
I meant to mention it beforehand because it's been every other one we've done. I've been first, but it was on the notes for you, so I left it.
I didn't even think.
It's end of season. It doesn't matter.
We've gone to put on the beach.
I like to ask a lot of questions to the co-hosts. I like to keep you on your toes. Andy, what's in the show?
Yeah, so lots of community questions to get through, even though the season has finished. So we've got a range of topics, deadline timing, which is quite being discussed a lot on Twitter at the moment. And is the game harder now that there's more managers? Not only more managers, but also more informed managers, obviously with podcasts, articles, videos and stuff. Questions about season key moments, both good and bad. And of course, any lessons we've learned as well. And also looking ahead to next season, how might our squads and stuff be different with 5 subs? Obviously, we have to still wait to see if that comes in. But if it does, how will that affect us? And which players might be reclassified? I think there's quite a few that could have position changes next season.
Okay, let's have a look at the game weeks. Game week 38, the final game week. So this see how we saw off this season. And who's got done best out of us? It's Andy. 78 points, 4-point hits, so 74. Pretty good. But tell us about your final game week.
This should go in order of final ranks. I'm not happy.
No.
I'm not happy having to
Game week
wait.
38 is the only week that matters.
My rank was awful. I'll hold my hands up. Absolutely awful. 162k I finished. My worst finish by... I think my worst one before that's like 102k. So yeah, pretty frustrating. But a good end to the season at least. 78 with a 4-point hit. It was chaos. Like we'll talk about the deadline. I was streaming. I'd helped my son with his free hit team. Like he chose the midfield, and I kind of helped him with all the cheapy players he's never heard of, just to build the squad around. So he went for Salah and Mane, and then suddenly I realised neither of them were going to be playing. So live on stream, I was fixing his team, and I was thinking, right, I've got to make my transfers as well. So it was an absolute nightmare. And
it's good parenting right there.
Yeah, I did his team first. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
And they say men can't multitask. You can do it, man.
Yeah, Street. Well, I literally just stopped Street. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do the team, so I'll be back with you in a minute. But yeah, it was chaos because I considered loads of scenarios, like what if De Bruyne doesn't play? What if Jesus doesn't play? And I had all these ways of getting Sterling or Salah into my team. And I hadn't considered for 1 minute that Salah wouldn't play. So I was suddenly left with Trent and Nico Williams. I thought, I'm going to do that. I thought I'm going to take a risk. He's he's almost going to be owned by no one. And I had like nearly 4 million to spend and no Salah to get. So in the end, I just caught Van Dijk in for a hit for Sice, who did end up scoring, so that was all right. And I swapped De Bruyne to Sterling. And if Salah had started, I would have kept De Bruyne as well. So that was, yeah, all around, I think it came out about even. Because I wouldn't have captained De Bruyne. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I would have. I would have captained Salah probably. So, yeah, 78 minus for a rubbish rank now, 162k. Of course, you know, with lockdown and stuff, doesn't count. So we'll just move on to the season.
And also, what an awesome, exciting end to the season. So just for the benefit of those listening on the podcast, that's McCarthy, Van Dijk with 9 points, Maguire and Williams. And then in your 3-5-2, you've got Fernandes, Sterling, who you captained, Mahrez, Martial, Son, Jesus and Ings. And also, just worth noting, you didn't waste anything on the bench as well. Foster, Nketiah, and Egan. 3 points. There we go. 3 points out.
I must say, I'm really happy with Mahrez because I feel like we would due some points from him. So to have a third bench in a row was frustrating, but to get the points. And then one thing we knew could happen, free hitters were all going to get rid of Man United players.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the best game, but they still came away with 17 points between Fernandes and Martial, so that was good. So
here's me. I'm in second. Yeah, that for the whole season, obviously, in game week 38. So, so I'll go through my team very quickly. Got 71. I took a 4-point hit. I've got McCarthy, Bolly, Robertson, Stevens, in a 3-5-2, Mahrez, David Silva, Salah, De Bruyne, Pulisic, Ings, and Captain Kane. And my bench, quite lovely, 3 points, just so I didn't waste anything there. Now, the tale of my game week was that I actually made my 2 free transfers on Friday night. I stuck 2 fingers up to deadline day and said, no, I'm not having that.
Old school.
I know the moves I want to make. I'm going to get put off them. I'm going to get put off with late team sheets. Do I trust them? I don't know. And all of that kind of thing. So I just thought I'm going to get Kane in for Vardy and I'm going to captain him. So that's nailed, and I'm sure Kane's going to start. And then I got rid of Fernandes for David Silva, and I'm sure David Silva's going to start. And people are going, "Oh, you got rid of Fernandes, 11 points." I hate Fernandes. His effective ownership is like 100 million. I've had enough of it. I wanted to go out. I put up a tweet saying, I did it my way with Sid Vicious. I wanted to go out this season doing it my way. And that was in a dullard way. Dullard captain, David Silva. Thanks a lot, magician. Off you pop. You're coming in my team. Final. And, I was hovering just below the 100k mark. Even if I'd have had like an unbelievable game week, probably the most I could have got was 60k maybe. And what do I say? What do I tell the grandkids? Hey, Dad, tell me the time you got 60k. That was amazing. Well, it wasn't. I'll tell them about the time I got 90k. I got David Silva in and Kane 2 days early and kept it stum. And that's what I'm going to say to them. And I thoroughly enjoyed Game Week 38. But the season itself, yeah. So I got within the top 100k. And I came second in my money mini league, so I'm really pleased about that. So I've got to sort out all the payments of that tomorrow. So I've got that done. Another thing, I believe I'm the only Scoutcaster to never finish out the top 100k. So always very low scores ish, if you can count 90ish low. But yeah, I felt pleased about that. But as the season goes, no, it was my worst season. Yeah. So there we go. So next up is Az. And before we discuss your game week, we have some great news for Az fans, and there are a lot of them around. So you will be joining me as the regular Scoutcast co-host from the new campaign. So each week there'll be us two, and we'll be joined by a special guest each week to help us and the listeners and the viewers too. So Az, onto your team. You free-hitted, you jammy so-and-so. Must have been amazing with those De Bruyne points, Solanke's goal. Tell us about your amazing free hit.
I see. Well, the rivalry's cranking up a gear now.
So how'd you get on then with your free hit?
You know what? It was chaos personified. It was awful. I hated leaving the free hit till this late, and I won't be doing it again, to be honest. I knew that I'd messed some stuff up and I'd take some players out who scored well, and taking out Fernandes and De Bruyne obviously hurt me. Let's just get all the bad stuff out of the way, because it's not all doom and gloom. But my kind of big decisions were who to have as my sort of. I knew I wanted to go heavy in attack, so as soon as I heard Salah was out, the obvious thing for me to do was to bring in Aubameyang instead and have him as my third striker. But no, old Az thinks, I'll be clever. I'll spread the money around my team. I'll get in Robertson. I'll get in Aurier. I'll get in Pulisic. And they all did rubbish. And actually, I took out like Peters. I could have had Aubameyang. So I just made the wrong decisions, and it's just frustrating because that would have been, sort of 10, 15 extra points. Which
I think you're being harsh on yourself. Robertson got an assist. Van Dijk and Robertson got 14 points between them. That's 7 points for the match each. And Newcastle scored in the first 20. Okay, fair enough. But Newcastle scored in the first 23 seconds, and then nothing after that. Like, on another day, that doesn't happen, does it? Yeah. It just fell asleep for the first minute.
It was frustrating because Liverpool lost the clean sheet straight away, and Aubameyang scored within about 3 minutes, and so it immediately felt like I was on the back foot. But you know what? All doom and gloom aside, it wasn't too bad. I mean, considering game week 11, I was ranked 2 million in the world, and I just had a crazy run since then. I was sort of around 200,000 just before lockdown, and I've ended up 17,000. So, if you'd offered me 17,000 at game week 11, I'd have bitten your hand off for it. So I'm actually pretty happy with how the season's gone overall, and yeah, ready for the next one. I just need a good start. This is the story of all my seasons. I start off so slow and then have a really strong end, and if I can just start strong, then I might actually do quite well for a change.
It's a good season. I mean, obviously, with me down at 90k, you up at 17k. There's no other way you can say it. It's a good season. We're going to talk about why it was overall a good season a bit later, especially when we talk about some of the lessons learned. But I know there's a particular question about lockdown and the chips as well, and that was a bit of a game changer for many of us. So any rough with the smooths for this week before we get on to the community questions?
Yes, indeed. It's the final week, so obviously there's a bucket load of roughs and smooths. I'm going to start with the roughs, so we can finish on a high with the roughs and the smooths afterwards. So if anyone's had a bad game week, hopefully some of these will make you feel better. Some of them made me wince, so I imagine they're going to do the same to you. Okay, so FPL Lampard. Oh God, we're starting strong. He took out KDB. He took out Aubameyang. For some reason, he took out Phil Foden and he took out Fernandes, and he brought in Sterling, Mahrez, Salah, and Origi, who he benched because he just wanted a cheap player. So 12-point hit, and because he switched the captaincy from KDB to Sterling, he lost 51 points overall with those moves on the final day. He got caught up in the chaos. So yeah, pretty rough. Everton Steve, 1983. He had a nice rank of 27k. Took out Fernandes, De Bruyne, and Wan-Bissaka from -8.
Sorry, you mustn't laugh, but that is massively funny.
So what? 11, 19, and 7 was it? Bought in Sterling, Son, and Braithwaite. Not great. So Sterling got 8, and then
Sterling, Son, and Braithwaite. That sounds like a northern news agents. Sterling, Braithwaite, and Son.
Yeah, not ideal. A couple more. Sijanas. God, these are painful. Sijanas took out a lot. It's all the big hits. I think because people were kind of doing what you said, Joe, trying to go out in a blaze of glory. It just makes these all look a lot worse. So Sijanas took out Alonso, Martial, Fernandes, and bought in Peters, Mahrez, Son, and Jesus. Ended up with 42 points and went from 19,000 to 39,000. So not great. Hung like a hamster till end of the season, 45 points. Sold KDB and Fernandes to try and chase a top 100k finish. Finished outside 300k in the end.
Jesus, so hard.
And FPL Vader was inside the top 10k. Looked just to play it safe. Ended up with 37 points. Finished 21,000.
Blimey. There are a few people in the chat and on Twitter would say I've got rules about taking a hit on the final day. And I don't see a problem with it, especially if your players if you get, as there has been some rumours of players not starting. I think you're swapping them. So for example, I spent my hit on Alexander-Arnold to Robertson. It was neither a profit nor loss. But at least I had someone who was going to play.
-12s though. -12. It's a lot to make up in one game.
-12. That's too much. Too rich for me.
If you've got news that someone's not starting and you haven't got anyone left, I can see why you take a hit for that. But you're asking a lot for these guys to make up,
especially on the final day. Game week 38 is special. We saw it. The results were great. Even a rubbish game like Leicester Manchester United ends up with Lingard scoring. I mean, when Lingard scores, it's been an amazing game week. And I've got to mention that young lad that I tipped to much mirth a couple of weeks ago, Solanke. Even he scored.
Junior Stanislas over here.
And you said Stanislas as well. You went, no, not Solanke, Stanislas. Proves we were both right. And that's why we're co-hosting.
That's why we're co-hosting.
Because we tip.
That's why Andy's off.
We tip the most obscure Bournemouth relegation fodder strikers.
And they come off once a season and we gloat about it for the rest. Nice.
So let's move on to the community questions. And we're going to have...
Hang on. I've got some smooths.
Oh, okay. Let's go. Sorry.
Well, just a couple, because people prefer the roughs, I think, but there is some quite nice ones out there. So a fat Spanish waiter, 30 minutes before the deadline, he took out Trent and Long for Virgil and Aurier, and then 10 minutes after that, he then did another 2 transfers, I assume on a free hit, and bought in Aubameyang and Martial, and overall in his panic transfers, finished on 86 and finished 8k. After being 13k.
Nice.
So, nice. Shout out to Late Riser, who finished 32nd in the world. He's the best FPL player in India, number 1 ranked in India, and that's the second time he's done that.
Amazing.
So I mean, crazy.
It's not like being the best in the Isle of Wight or something. It's the best in like
in India.
massive.
I know, yeah. Printing Mane, he was 25 points off the top K, threw caution to the wind on his free hit, 95 points, and ended up 9,910. So just crept in. And the last one of the season, of the Roughs and the Smooths, is Aardvark 22. And I like this story because this is an example of when it pays to do nothing, and you might think is a rough but gets turned into a smooth. He intended to bring in David Silva and captain him, but was away, and his Wi-Fi wasn't working, and he missed the ability to do that. And his captaincy stayed on Kevin De Bruyne, and he ended up on 85 points and inside the top 10,000.
Man after a moment.
Smooth as you like.
The best thing to do in FPL is absolutely nothing sometimes.
Oh, yes.
Let's move on to the community questions. And we've got to start with this subject because we've alluded to it already. Is a little headline. I mean, think of the deadline day, but think of the poor journalists as well. David Monday here, having to write this really quickly on deadline day and sort his own team out. Klopp decimates fantasy teams in mass rotation in Liverpool assets is the headline, and that's what it was. We started to get rumours through, and we've had some questions on it really. So people are not keen on the deadlines at the moment, or perhaps they are. There's debate around it. It did make for an exciting day, but is it that sort of excitement that people want? FPL Ronaldo, can we get rid of deadline before team news? Leaks, fake accounts, it's all just chaos. Can we move the deadline 30 minutes to move to after team news as well? So we know the facts there. We can make those moves. Is not knowing part of the game though, he says. And Siva Mohan, please can we move the deadline? So it's a hot topic of debate at the moment. What do we do with these deadlines? Let's go to you first, Andy. What do you think of the deadlines? Is it keep it as it is? What's your just general views about it?
I think right now it's pretty difficult to kind of argue for keeping it exactly where it is. It's like 1 hour before, there's news coming out nearly every week, which means you almost have to wait. You don't have to wait, of course. There's still benefits to going early. Maybe you save a bit of team value, etc. But it feels like you should have to wait. And unless you're around for that kind of 15-minute window, you're at a disadvantage to other people. So I feel like it should be moved either towards... so it's later basically, so it's maybe right up until kickoff, so everyone can get a look at the team sheet or the first team sheets of the day. Obviously that doesn't help people. We've got to remember not everyone's playing from the UK and on a similar time zone. Like the difference between, I've seen a lot of people saying that's how Sky works, but Sky is very limited into who can play. It's mostly UK and Ireland from what I know. Whereas FPL, we know it's huge. It's all around the world. There's people in Australia having to... Again, they don't have to get up. They're at a disadvantage if they don't get up to check those team news. Or the other option is to put it an hour back. And so there's no guarantee of team news. Now, people will say, well, there's still going to be times when you're going to get news. And I fully appreciate it. You're never going to stop it completely. It's never going to be fair for everyone. And I'm not sitting there on my high horse saying I would never use those leaks because I use every single one. Why wouldn't I? I'm not going to put myself at a disadvantage. But if you move it back so it's 2 hours before kickoff, then there's not as much, disadvantage for doing your team early. Sure, you might. Like we've seen it before. We've seen there was a time when I owned Jamie Vardy, and we suddenly heard on a Friday evening from a journalist that he hadn't made training or something. He probably wasn't going to start the match. You get those things every now and again, but literally getting the team sheets every single week in a 15-minute window, it doesn't feel fair on anyone. And it's not even people on the same time zone. Maybe they got jobs, maybe they've got family and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's always the argument of, well, that's kind of the advantage you get when you're really engaged in the game. But it just doesn't feel right in such a small window. So I think it should be moved. I don't necessarily mind it going towards kickoff, but I think it's probably a little bit fairer for everybody all around the world, basically, if it gets moved back. So it's an hour earlier. We just do our teams and then hope for the best. And there's going to be times when you get screwed over by the team sheets. But as people like Late Riser and FPL Heskabo point out on Twitter, they take risks sometimes not knowing the team sheets, hoping to get ahead because some people won't go for Aguero in case he doesn't start, whereas they want to guess that he will start without everyone getting that information fed to them and then that's also like an advantage over them. So yeah, I can see why people want it staying the same, but I feel like at this stage there's just too much info that only certain people are getting, and so it should be moved. In my opinion.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't like the idea of it moving back. So you've got 2 hours before you make your thing. I just, from a selfish point of view, I think my enjoyment would be less having to wait all that time for it to start. But I mean, that's not the best reason. I mean, the thing is, I mean, I play FPL with some quite hardcore FPL guys, and they're all seeing the leaks, all these kind of information. We've all got the same information. We all knew about Liverpool. It's all kind of the same. But then I play a league with some friends, and none of them knew about them. And so, we had quite a nice competitive thing going towards the end, like a post-lockdown league, and everyone's fighting for to come top of that. And loads of them had Salah, Mane, Trent, and had no idea, and it kind of ruined. It just ruined the last day for them, because when I said, I knew, so I took Salah out, I should have probably messaged them, but it's ridiculous. It just seems a bit kind of stupid to have to do that, and people aren't paying attention, and it kind of ruins it for the people who, the whole point of FPL is it's supposed to stay accessible, and it's why they haven't added loads of rules in about like interceptions and passes and all this stuff. The game is simple and designed to keep people kind of engaged, and I think the leagues is in danger of kind of driving a bit of a wedge between the casual and the more hardcore players. I mean, there's games out there which work well with the coming right up to the start of the match. You can make your transfers right up until the start of the game and have 45 minutes, an hour, seeing the first team sheets. So like goal scorer challenge, you can choose your player up to then. I think Sky you can do the same. And I don't think there's any real issue with that. I think what it does is it encourages people to pick a player in that kind of early game because they're going to start, which can actually help people, because if people are then basing decisions on that early game, which might not be the best fixture or something like that, just because they think they're going to play, it can give others the edge who do want to take a risk and play someone else. So I don't think it would massively favour certain different types of people if they did that. I just don't like the idea of moving it back, because I don't think it. I just don't think. I think it would affect people's enjoyment. It's like, some people are saying you just move it back to like 8 or 9 in the morning, but then you've got people who wake up late on a Saturday, and forget to do their teams, and then they've got hours. It still doesn't seem as accessible to me and as fun as if they moved it the other way. So that's what I'm in favour of.
Well,
before you give your point, there's a couple of things in chat I've seen on Twitter. One is about the fact that people abroad get access to all the games as if that's the same thing. I don't really get that argument, because that's completely different. They probably get cheaper beer as well, but that's got nothing to affect on the FPL deadline. So I don't really get that argument. And the other one is, of course, getting early team news doesn't necessarily mean it's an advantage. Like if we'd seen the Man City team sheet, would I have done Mahrez or David Silva? Potentially. But I think you always want that info if it's there, right? You always want to hope that you make the best decision. Yeah. Like, what about people that triple captain Salah this week? Like, that's what the world number one did. If he had seen that team news, would he still triple captain Salah? I don't think so. So I think more often than not, having that news is better than not.
I think it makes it more fun. It made the final day more fun for me, taking Trent and Salah out. Because if I'd spent all that time doing the free hit and then I'd had them in, then I'm a bit like, for God's sake, that's 2 of my most expensive players not even playing. And you immediately, the game's supposed to be fun at the end. I want players who are going to start. And if there's a little window where I can find that out and it's fair,
I don't really have an issue with it being at kickoff, so you see the teams. I really don't. The only kind of argument I can see to not do that is that, again, you have to be around on that time zone. Whereas if you do it 2 hours earlier, yes, okay, you might not have to do that, but there's not so much of a disadvantage to do it the night before. The chance of getting team news from 9 o'clock at night on a Friday to, I don't know, 10 a.m. on Saturday, it's probably not going to happen. So it doesn't matter when you do the transfers then. And then more people on different time zones can make theirs. So that's the only reason I would see that. But I don't mind it going to kick off.
I think let's just assume they just don't change it. So this is what we're stuck in. We're stuck in a 24-hour social media world. And they're not going to change it. So, for example, the way I handled it this week, right, I'm getting in Kane and David Silva because I'm sure they're going to start. And, the David Silva, okay, blanked, but Kane did well. And so you make those types of moves. So perhaps you have to sort of adjust how you make the decisions you make. Maybe the days of pet roulette, we're going to like ease off that a bit. I mean, I took advantage at 255 because there was some rumours around that that Trent wasn't going to start. So I made that move then because I was online at 255 to Robertson. And so I was able to do that. But if it was 255 and I was living somewhere else in the world, I couldn't do that. So they're already, people around the world are already at a disadvantage. People who've got kids and are trying to do things on a Sunday afternoon are already at a disadvantage. Some people are advantaged and some people are disadvantaged. And I think the best way, because this is my weekly Sky mention, and Andy's already mentioned it, and I know that the Sky, the deadline is before kickoff and it's after the team news. And I know it's non-geographic, so it's pretty much UK and Ireland. And I had 2 free transfers left. I could leisurely, with the benefit of the team sheets, and I had 2 free transfers. I saw that Trent Alexander-Arnold wasn't playing, and I had a striker space to go for. And in that game, Sterling is a striker. There we go. I can move Sterling in, and I've got a Burnley defender in as an enabler. There we go. Done. Captain Sterling. And I could do that leisurely with thought around it. And it was nice, and it was quite relaxing. And the fun level wasn't diminished. And I think they should do that because we live in it's a global game, and social media, everyone's got access to it. Everyone's going to be awake or asleep at some point around the world. You can't cater for all of them. And yes, it is a game of the English Premier League. And if you're really, really into it, then you're going to wake up at that deadline because you're missing out on a quarter of an hour of team leaks anyway. So you may as well make your decisions on actual fact rather than, oh my God, is this real? I don't know. Is he going to start? I don't know. And then you're panicking. I mean, I wouldn't want to do that at 3 a.m. Not that I particularly at 3 a.m. want to make that transfer anyway, but what I'm saying, it's going to disadvantage someone. So it's really difficult to do. You're always going to get someone who's going to complain. But I think the best thing, make it a complete leveller and accept that we live in a 24-hour media and social media age. And just say, right, let people make an informed decision based on facts, and that's it. That's my rant. And I just think if FPL doesn't do that at some point, it's going to look a bit old-fashioned because the rest of the world is 24-hour and social media based.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm not bothered either. Really. I just think it shouldn't stay where it is. Because the other thing is, if it gets pushed to kick-off, then at least if you are to get up stupidly early to check, you can just check the team's Twitter. You're not having to try and find someone on Twitter who's leaked it, people sharing it.
Oh, exactly.
You've got the
it's
info
nice and
there.
easy. I mean, I could have done my Sky transfers like half asleep. There's no way I could have made that last minute Trent Alexander to Robertson thing at 2:55. I would have been bolt upright. I might as well have just had like 80 cups of coffee at 3 a.m. And that's the kind of adrenaline.
It's the inconsistency of it as well. Like, we got that Liverpool leak from an account with 100,000 followers, and so we kind of, we knew that it was going to be reliable. But I mean, well,
was it though? I don't know. I don't know who these people are.
I know.
Donald
of course
Trump's
you don't,
got 80 million, and I'm not sure everything he says is accurate. He may be.
Yeah, it's a good point. But I mean, if it was like every team got leaked at the same time by the same people, you'd kind of think, oh well, at least you've got reliable things. But there's no reliability, there's no consistency. No. Certain teams get it, certain teams don't. Like it's just a mess at the moment.
It's the Wild West, isn't it? It's just the Wild West. And I just want Wyatt Earp to come on in and say, hey guys, you know what? You can make changes right up to kick-off, and that'll be nice and easy for you and relax. And that'll be lovely. Nice hippie Wyatt Earp to come in and change it. Anyway, let's move on. We got another question. Got lots more questions. So, Andy, do you want to read this one? Who's the next one? Ged, I believe.
Ged, yeah. Compared with years ago, does it feel harder to attain top one? I guess that's to win. Top 1K, top 10K, or top 50K, because of more players each season, or because of more FPL advice? It's like obviously Twitter accounts, there's websites popping up, podcasts, videos. Like everyone's kind of, or a lot more people have got YouTube channels and stuff now. So. I'll go to you guys on this one. Do you think? I mean, is it just harder now to get a top position? Simple as that.
I mean, I don't know. I still feel like if you make good decisions and bring in the right players, you'll finish well and do well. Like nothing's changed in terms of things like that. I mean, I'm finding FPL more stressful the last couple of years. I think just because I feel like I'm getting more decisions wrong, not necessarily because I'm having to fight up against loads of better players. I like the competition that the more hardcore players bring to it. I don't want 7 million people of guys who forget to check their teams or don't make transfers for 5 weeks. I like the fact that the thing is active, so I've got no complaints there. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, there is no, the two things that I hear mentioned a lot are the 1% thing, so finishing in the top 1%, or finishing in the top 10,000. They seem to be the two kind of
1% is the most meaningless.
Yeah, of a good season. I mean, 1%, 2%, finishing in the top 10%. It's all redundant. I mean, I still like. I mean, I am old-fashioned. I still like the idea of a top 10k finish. I think aesthetically, on the history, when you see, down to 4 digits, I think that works. That works nicely. And then if you've got 3 digits, even better. 2 digits, you can judge someone based on their digits. That sounds a bit weird, but you know what I'm trying to get at. But yeah, I mean, it is. There is no doubt that it is harder. But I also do think that in amongst all the advice and in amongst everything that people absorb, it can actually make it harder in a way, because people do stop kind of trying to think for themselves a little bit and trying to kind of disaggregate, making decisions that you think are right and kind of being swayed by others adds another element into the game for people like us who are quite involved in things. So you've got to play your own game, and I think if you do play your own game and you make decisions based on the stats we've got, the eye test, gut feel, all those kind of things, then you should still finish highly. So that's my take on it. I think it's good.
Easy for Mr. 17k to say.
Oh yeah,
you can still finish highly. What about you, Joe? Do you think it's harder now? Are you finding it harder?
No. And people go, hey Joe, you got 90,000, but you've got 10,000 before, and now you're 90,000. Doesn't matter. Look, it's as hard or as easy as it ever was, because there's engaged managers and there are more of them and there's more access to things. But we're in the business of giving advice to people, so we're hardly going to say, oh, isn't it really bad that everyone's got access to really great advice from people like us? Well, hopefully good advice. But so it's like the turkey voting for Christmas. We want people to be more engaged, be more informed. We want more competition in that. But I don't think it's getting harder, especially. So, I mean, I remember, 4 seasons ago, I came 80,000. And that was my worst season. And I'd had top 10k finishes for about 5 seasons before that in a row. And so obviously you immediately think, it must be getting harder. Competition's getting great. Then the next season I was in the top 2,000. So how do I go? So it just proves, as was saying, it's the randomness of who you pick. And you can make skill-based judgments on who to pick. But then you have to trust those players and the luck. Will they show up? So then it goes back to the whole luck and skill argument. So what you're doing, if you've got multiple top finishes, what you're doing is you're narrowing odds all the time. So something we'll talk about a bit later is about chips and things like that. I advocate using them where possible in a double game week, because you're narrowing the odds of that player showing up and doing something, because they're going to do it twice instead of once. That's the theory. So I don't think it's harder at all, and I don't think it's a problem that more people are more informed and better at the game. I still think it's a level playing field. Anyone out of 7 million's got a chance in theory. And it's also how we react to team news and all these types of things. And I'm talking team news throughout the week as well. Football stories. The thing I think has changed, and it's not the amount of people playing, is chips. Chips reduce the skill factor and they up the luck factor. For example, I triple captained Mane this year. Got injured. How is that good or bad skill? That's just a guy getting injured. He's got no track record of massive injuries. That just happens. Mane could have scored a hat-trick in both of those games and played. And then I'll be saying, wow, what an amazing chip genius I am. But it's not. You're just narrowing the odds. It was still the right move to make. And as we'll talk about, when you're looking at your season and you're looking at the decisions you make, those 50-50 calls, sometimes you get them right, sometimes you get them wrong. But the mission for us really is also this next season is to navigate our way around a global pandemic. We've already had a postponement of the season. There could be local lockdowns. Keeping an eye on the news is a skill, and that's going to be a really important skill for managers in the future. And these are the issues: reducing the skill factor through chips and understanding how COVID-19 is going to affect the game over the next season. These are the things that are much more important than more people watching our show and getting Solanke in and enjoying his goal.
I mean, I do think it literally is harder by definition, right? If there was 3 million people a few years ago and you were trying to go for top 10k and now there's 7 million, then surely top 10k is almost the same, right? Because there's double the amount of players. And yes, some of them will not be hardcore players, but you've got to imagine whatever percentage of the 3 million was hardcore, it's probably a very similar percentage in the 7 million. And people will say there's more dead teams, of course, but there was dead teams when we were 3 million. So I think by definition, it literally is harder because there are more people, as simple as that. I'll tell you what else is harder as well, is trying to break away from the noise. Like in the last weeks, like going Antonio over Pulisic, that was really hard. Not going for David Silva this week was tough. Sterling captain, in the end, I went for that. Although I probably would have done that anyway, to be fair. Like weeks ago, Jamie Vardy against Bournemouth, everyone just talking about the one move. It's really hard to just not go for that. So trying to kind of break away from the noise is difficult. But yeah, I think it literally is harder by definition because there's more players and they're more informed. And the thing is, then just really quickly, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's a super good player, but they have all the little things that we used to kind of have an advantage for. They know about now. There's like all these little small things, like even like if it was chips and double game weeks or something like that. Most people won't blow them early. Not to say you can't do well in a single game week, but we know usually it's best to save them. So there's little small things that maybe back in the day we knew. All that stuff's known now. So you kind of got to, I don't know, just go one step further and make smarter decisions, which you always have to do. So yeah, it doesn't mean people that always finish in the top 10k won't keep doing that. But I do think by definition it's just harder.
The pressure that there's definitely more pressure. I think as the community's grown and people, the community's so tight and because you see people doing well each week, and we've talked about kind of mental health and that kind of impact on things. And I think that is something where I think the 1% thing has a bit of an advantage, because at least that kind of does change based on the number of players and can kind of give you a sense that you're doing the right things if you're kind of around that mark. I mean, you see people posting stuff like, with all the information, think how easy it's so easy to get into the top 10,000 now. And it's like, well, if it's that easy for everyone, it's not like you hit a certain mark and you're in the top 10,000. Like, if everyone hit the same mark, some people aren't going to be in the top 10. There's only 10,000. It's a limited number of places to be. So Andy's right. Like the more people you add, the less chance you've got.
And also, the bigger the noise, and we do get, as I was saying with the answer to the last question about, we live in a 24-hour news culture with social media and established media as well. And that's a lot of pressure. So there's loads of voices. Something I do in Twitter, and a lot of people say, oh no, I can't believe, someone's muted me or something like that. I mute loads of people, not because I don't like them, but just because I don't want to. I can't process 220,000 whatever people's teams every deadline day. It's too much information. It's like on Facebook, where you've got lots of pictures of all your friends' breakfast or what they've had for dinner that night. I can't process all my friends' dinner. And I hope they can process it. But I can't. It's just too much information. And so one of the skills that I've had to learn, and I think lots of other people are as well, is trying to get through that noise. So, for example, this week Sterling was definitely the player to get in. I just got it in my head to not get him, and I was just thinking, well, I'm not going to make that move because it just doesn't fit with my team. Whereas Aubameyang or Kane would. And so, but just trying to cut through that noise. It could have been that Sterling scored a hat-trick and Kane got nothing. That could have happened. But the decision is there. And I think the ultimate piece of advice there is don't make a decision based on one player in one game week. If Jamie Vardy, Sterling is the main player to get in that game week, think of the other game weeks. Think of how your team is structured. Think of, the price points, or whether you need a hit to rectify it, and all these types of things. And that's what you should do. And just think, I'm going to avoid that noise and all that pressure to get Vardy in or whatever, Sterling, and just avoid that. But so yeah, that's a skill I think we're all going to have to learn, because this is the world we're living in. But yeah.
I think with like targets though, like you might have the target of a top 10k finish at the start of the season, but as the season evolves, your targets change.
Yeah.
And if you look at like some of the top managers around, like someone like Mark finishing around the 200,000 mark, like Andy finishing outside the top 100,000, Joe just about scraping his way in. Like it's not like every year everyone is having good seasons. You're if you can consistently finish 50,000, then you've got other managers who are finishing 300,000 one year, 1,000 another year. Like it's that changes a bit, and I'm happy. Although I was initially disappointed not getting into the top 10k, actually 17k for where I was 10 weeks ago is a great finish. And I'll look back at this season and think, wow, I managed to claw my way back from an absolute disaster to something quite respectable. So if you look at things in isolation, oh, you didn't finish in the top 10,000, you're rubbish. It's not true, because you need the context of the other parts of the season to really...
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we do have a question on that about sort of making FPL a bit more fun. And setting, and one of those things is exactly what you said there. You set yourself different targets as well, and forget what everyone else's target is. Like it may look, when you look on Twitter or Fantasy Football Scout, hey, how come 4,000 people are all in the top 1k? Huh? And not everyone is doing massively well. They'll just talk a lot about it, as you would, as they are completely justified to do if you're in the top 1k. But most people are just wherever they are, and just set your own targets. But yeah, we've got another question. It's from Shirtless. Yeah, Az, do you want to read this one out?
Yes. So, good question. I think you've got some thoughts on this, Joe. So we'll come to you first. Was the unlimited transfers restart a pivotal moment in the season? Those with the second wild card, like me, seem to have a massive advantage. Did the post-lockdown use of chips in single game weeks boost the luck factor too much? Go back to you, Joe.
Yes, it was me.
Want to talk about this.
It was me, but I'm not going to like say, oh, that one decision by FPL derailed my season, because it's all my decisions. That what it did is it created a scenario in which I made certain decisions, but those decisions were wrong. And I can look back on those decisions, and sometimes you look back and it's, do you look back on the decision or the outcome? I can look back on triple captaining Mane when he got injured. It's a good decision. He got injured. That's the outcome. You can't justify that. That's just one of those things. But with the lockdown, so I used my second wild card and in February, and I still don't know whether that was a good or bad decision, because the outcome, it says it was a bad decision, because the outcome was there was a blooming global pandemic and the game got cancelled for several months. I didn't predict that in February. Perhaps I should have done, because I should have been keeping an eye on the news, because this thing was spreading in January, February. But nevertheless, I used it then. So I was all set up for a blank game week that never happened. I was on my way to getting set up for all of the teams that had double game weeks left. I was really, really well set up, and I had a completely different strategy than I usually play, and other people have used that before and it's worked, and I don't know, it could have worked, I don't know.
I'm getting flashbacks of your wildcard.
Yeah, though, and it was great, and it got me green arrows, and
was it great?
It was great. But there was a global pandemic, so we'll never know just how great it was. But the problems with my decisions that came with this unlimited transfers that everyone got is it was a bone that was thrown, and we interviewed Josh from Always Cheating on Meet the Manager before, and he said that if the game throws you a bone, take advantage of it, and I didn't. Yep. And what I should have done, so bench boost is a definite in a double game week for me. That's like 100% nailed on now. And I didn't take advantage of having that. I didn't have that second wild card, but I could have used that wild card and that bench boost in conjunction and still had a great team and had an effective bench boost. And I could have used my free hit for game week 38, which would have been a great week to do it because it was goal-alicious. But I didn't do that. As a result, I used my bench boost. I got 2 points from my bench boost. That's 2 extra points, that is. My triple captain, obviously, didn't get much for that. And my free hit was sort of okay, but I was sort of matching or just below those that use an unlimited transfer. So yeah, what lesson can I learn from that is focus on the double game weeks. But for me, the pivotal moments aren't necessarily what the game decides with the rules. It's how you react to them. but ultimately it's the players. So for example, here's an example I'll give. Rasping Drive, great manager. He's in the top 1,000 loads of times this season. So this is what he was saying on Fantasy Football Scout. He said, personally, I ignored. So he did it a different way. He ignored the unlimited transfers and played his free hit in Game Week 30 plus. But here's the key bit. He then bench boosted Game Week 31 plus. Okay, you can get luck with that. But then he wildcarded in Game Week 33. So he could do all of that because he had that second wildcard. And he climbed from 44k to 4k at the end. And that's pretty to be honest, for Raspberry Drive, that's not a good finish. He's that good. But for him, it was having the right City and United players seems to have been the key. And that is fundamentally it. Is picking the right players. That's hopefully where we can help.
The unlimited transfers in the second wildcard was literally tailor-made for the people with the second wildcard, because you could literally just stock up on those unlimited and then just bin the whole lot of them the next week. Amazing. It was great. The other problem with the unlimited transfers was the fact that people who had been making transfers and sorting their team out through the pandemic were then it was pointless to even bother checking your team. And apart from, I don't think there were any price rises like throughout, because you were kind of punished for staying active and doing his thing, because you even lost rank every time you're making a transfer because of how few people were doing it. So but the trouble was, we were in a pandemic and there wasn't a right solution, because the game, I think it was right to do the unlimited transfers to bring in the people that would have lost enjoyment from having a crap team from earlier on, and it was nice to kind of level that playing field around. But it did definitely suit the wildcarders like me, I'd say. Andy, thoughts on all of that business?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I did make transfers during lockdown, and it did work out because I didn't have my wild card, so it was actually good for me to do that, because it meant I could free hit. Although my free hit did worse than my actual team, but that's just one of those things. Like, did the chips in the single game week make it more luck based? If anything, probably a bit less, because I guess in a double game week the luck could be doubled almost. So I don't know. I try not to worry about this too much, because we may never have another situation like this in FPL in the next kind of 20, 30 years. So was it a massive advantage for those with a second wild card? It was an advantage. People either had their wild card or their free hit. I don't think the wild card was that much bigger an advantage over those with free hit. If they made transfers, if they didn't, then maybe it was less. But then how much have they not gained by not using the wild card earlier in the season? It's impossible to know. I used mine a similar time to Joe, and it got me green arrows at the time. Could I have got those green arrows without using the wild card? Maybe. But that's the beauty of FPL. It's very hard to know those things, because you can't go back and say, if I'd done this transfer, then the next week I would have done this one. You just don't know how you would have played it differently. So it was. I don't think it was as big a pivotal moment as maybe people are making out, to be honest. And it was just such a weird situation. Like, what can you do about it? Like,
rank boosting pivotal moments. Getting in Antonio before his 4 goals and captaining him.
Yeah, that was better than
that is the most pivotal moment I've ever seen. And that happened because we read out in the rough with the smooth. That happened to people. You had him in, but there were other people who captained him as well. And there was a small percentage. That's a pivotal moment for particular managers, the minority who did that. Because you are captaining an incredible high ceiling differential. So doesn't matter about chips. For those people that kept wildcard, they probably had other chips as well. And if anything, they were disadvantaged. They didn't get to use them in the double game, which is what a lot of people were saving them for. So I think there's kind of pros and cons to people with or without chips. And overall, it probably evens out to the point where actually it's just the decisions that were made with those chips that were the key player, not just having those chips. If that makes sense. So I mean, one of my lessons learned is definitely bench boost is for double game weeks. You can have a really good bench boost. You did, Andy, in a single game week, but you are reducing the luck and you're upping the skill if they're playing twice. So it's just reducing the odds. But More Cowbell, which is a great name, asks, what lessons have we learned from 1920 that we can take into our 2021 season to make us better fantasy managers? So there's one of mine. What lessons have you learned this season?
Yeah, I mean, I do a kind of podcast on this, so I've got quite a few. So I'll talk about these a fair bit. But I mean, there's lots of. I think the biggest problem, and I seem to say it every year. I mean, the biggest problem I do is I overcomplicate things, and I think my strategy next year, and it's something I wanted to do this year, but I never did, is think about the transfers I want to make right at the start of the week, just based on, just have a quick look at the fixtures, who's playing what looks like a good transfer, who are my weak links, blah, write that down, because it's amazing how much that initial idea changes over the course of a week based on stuff you read on Twitter and stuff that if things get in your head, you start doubting yourself. You suddenly think Sterling's a must, and then you think, oh, actually, I don't want Salah because I don't want to look like a mug if he goes crazy. And then I want to think about the end of the week. If that decision's changed from what I originally thought, what are the reasons for why that's changed? And if those reasons make sense, like there's an injury, or there was another game and that player's played really well, or the stats show that something I hadn't considered before, and that kind of thing, then it's fine. But if I'm just doing it because I'm suddenly having a last minute change of heart for no reason that's not based on anything, I think that's when you need to kind of step back and just think and trust the kind of the early judgments you make rather than risking it. The other thing I think is definitely patience and keeping faith with players. Like you can be too clever. So like players like Ings and Grealish and guys like that, they hit fixtures which were quite tough, and people try to be smart and move them out and then struggle to bring them back in because they'd gone. But I think form breeds more form. Fixtures breed form, but form breeds more form regardless of fixtures. So in the whole fixtures and form debate, I think fixtures are important, but form carries on over games. Like someone like Ings.
The fixtures are good.
I don't agree. I mean, it's happened too many times to me where I've taken a player out who's in great form, a striker who's in great form before a bad run of fixtures. Igalo, Ings, it happened to Grealish, and they continue to keep delivering the points. And not only are they delivering the points, their price keeps going up. Yeah. So you sell them because you think they're not going to score in these games. They carry on scoring okay, and they're not getting 15-point hauls. They're still getting 5 or 6, 7 points, someone like Grealish. But then you come to wanting to buy them back, and you're having to pay 0.7, 0.8 more. You've got this. There's a lot to consider when you're selling a player in form, which is going to make me think twice about it going forward.
Mine actually are kind of maybe not the same, but they're actually along a similar line of thinking. They kind of join together actually as well, and very similar to what you just said. I still think fixtures are a huge thing. I don't buy this form over fixtures all the time that some people have. Like, I sold Ings at the wrong time. Selling them ahead of Watford was stupid. But then people were saying he's fixture-proof when he had Man United and Man City in the next 3. He's fixture-proof. It doesn't matter. You just buy him back. Well, which 2 teams did he blank against? Man United and Man City, because they're really tough fixtures. He scored against Everton. So 1 goal in 3 fixtures. So mistake to sell him, not a mistake to ignore the form and realise that he had bad fixtures. But one thing I will say about fixtures, which I do all the time, is I overplay how hard a fixture is. Man City, Liverpool, I would say Man United, I know people won't agree, but they've been a good defence this year. They are tough fixtures, whereas I think this year, if I'd see a fixture run with like Everton at home, Watford away, Southampton at home, because it's not Norwich at home, Bournemouth at home, I'm saying actually that's quite tricky, but realistically, it's not. So that's where I agree. Like, that's kind of where I wouldn't be selling players.
So the worst possible run a player could have then would be 3 teams with United a kind of half. So at worst, he's going to blank in 2 games with that kind of logic. So is it worth selling that player and then considering having to get him back, someone like Ings who's got a better run after that, just for those 2 games?
Yeah, no, not for something like that. I was thinking more like bringing the player in rather than...
Yeah. I'm talking, selling them. I mean, selling the player in form is risky.
Yeah, like if you've got... Yeah, and especially you do have to take into account how much you pay have to pay him, buy him back for. But if Ings had a run of like Liverpool, Man United, Man City, then I would still consider selling him even if I had money tied up. Because I think for those 3 fixtures, and just really quickly, my other one is stop trying to force players out of my team. Sometimes I'm so fixated on wanting to sell a player that I will just do anything when actually maybe they've got an okay fixture. It's like Jimenez. I was thinking he's not done very much, but there's no one I really wanted to bring in for him. And so I stopped myself from forcing him out of my team. And I think I do that too much. I just think, I don't need this player anymore. He hasn't scored very well. So I'm going to sell him. No matter what other things I need to do, I'm going to sell him. I think I need to stop doing that, really.
Danny Ings is a really good example for a slightly different reason, and it's is keeping an eye on stats. It's keeping an eye on the eye test as well. So, for example, before lockdown, I got Danny Ings in, and then he started blanking. And I was thinking, why is he blanking? I've got him in. He's fixture proof. Why? And he's playing really relatively easy sides as well. Now, and then you look at it, and then you look at the team sheet, and then you see Redmond's not there. So the creative guy's not there. And so Danny Ings is filling in for the creative guy. So their other strikers, Shane Long, and some of the wingers are starting to get forward a bit more. You started to see some goals from Armstrong. You started to see Ward-Prowse getting a bit more attacking returns. But Ings wasn't. So it's I think a lesson to learn there is to have a look at those stats, have a look at the way the game is, have a look at the relationship between players and whether someone who is previously a fixture-proof striker is actually just fulfilling a more creative role. Harry Kane's a good example for that. Hey, why is Harry Kane playing deep in midfield? Well, because they're losing a bit of creativity there. Put the creative players back in, Lo Celso, for example, suddenly Kane can bomb forward a bit more. So it's keeping an eye on those things. The other one for me is COVID-19. I think I've said it before. This is a lesson to learn. There could be lockdowns any time. Just be prepared for those kinds of things. And that could mean the risk of further postponements. And we already know that one of the issues that could happen is we could get a blank and double game weeks within the first 3 game weeks. Imagine that.
That hurts my brain
because
so much.
The teams that are still in the Champions League and Europa League have got to have a 30-day break. And if they carry on in the tournament into August, they can't have a 30-day break if they start game week 1. They have to start a bit later, game week 2, game week 3. So that means you're going to get a blank for certain teams. And that means that those teams could indeed play a double as soon as game week 2 or 3, or maybe even later. So already we've got a tricky situation to navigate through COVID-19. And it could mean that I bench boost in a double game week in game week 3. I don't know. But one of the lessons I have learned, I could mean
our team's going to be filled with Burnley and Southampton
players. It could be that I start with Burnley and Southampton players, and then once Manchester United, Man City and Chelsea and Wolves start backing in, and then I can wildcard in game week 2 and 3 and just load up on them, an early wildcard there. I don't know. But these are things you've got to keep an eye on. I'll
just do one more thing that I want to do, which people are going to hate hearing. I actually think I might want to use stats a little bit more than I already do, because I've been thinking about the eye test, right? And I know people swear by it. I sometimes think it can be a bit deceiving. I think you kind of confirm your own bias sometimes with the eye test. I don't know about you, but when I watch a team with my player in or a player I might want to get, I fixate on them. I don't look at what everyone else is doing in the team. I just watch them. And I think sometimes you'll see more because you're doing that, whereas you probably should see what the whole team's doing. And I think you don't have that kind of bias with stats. The stats are just there. XG doesn't change depending on what you've seen or whatnot. It's just like a fixed thing. So that's I haven't seen Antonio play pretty much. I just chose him because of XG.
Yeah.
I think
it was. We mentioned him, didn't it? Goals imminent table. There he was on there. Bingo. Yeah. I just wanted to just had a message in the chat, Jack Benzie, about me wasting my chips early again, Joe. The point is, it's not when you're using them early, it's using them effectively. So if there's a double game week in game week 3, then use your chips around that, because you could get in a situation where everything's a single game week from game week 30 onwards, like we're having now, and suddenly you've got to use your bench boost in a single game week. So in fact, it's a question of using your chips at the right time and keeping an eye on the news. Hey, we've got another good question here from Ian Walker. Andy, do you want to read this one out?
This is a rubbish question because I know my answer. How many great game weeks did you have? Not very many. Less than 100,000 game week rank. I'll just go first. 2. That's it. I had 2 all season where I was less than 100k. Yeah. Game week 27, bench boost, 99 points in a single game week. That was a triple digit game week rank for me, 258 out of everyone. And then game week 35, which I'm sure is probably one of Az's as well. Antonio, 4 goals, 91 points total, 24,916. So, yeah, I mean, that kind of you don't necessarily need to be kind of 4 or 5 figures every week to get a really high rank. You need to be consistent, but only 2 for me. How about you, Joe?
Well, guess what? It was my first wild card. So I wildcarded game week 5, but it was game week 6 that wild card really showed its mettle. So one. I've had one good game week this season, and it was in game week 6. I got a rank of 46,000 or so game week rank then, and I went from 640,000 to 86,000. So it was an amazing week in terms of rank boost there, and I didn't really steer away from the top 100k at all for the rest of the season. So the problem isn't how many great game weeks did I have, because the answer's simple. I only had one. But the problem is that I had lots and lots of quite good to average game weeks. I didn't actually have many bad game weeks at all. I just had lots of game weeks. So I'm like a team who gets 1-1 draws or something. I'm not going to win 2-1. I'll just get 1-1 draw. It'll do. And my sub 5 million scores, only 2. I only had really 2 mega bad game weeks. And most of them were around 1 million to 3 million. So they were a little bit above average, but not much. And there you go. And that's why I ended up 90k by the end of it, because that's the end score of a really, really dull average player, which I am. But that's the tale of that season there. So lessons learned, because I always, you want to lesson learn. This season, I think, was one of those kind of those uplift moves that Late Riser always talks about. Picking like a very strong captain for a particular game week, but just not being afraid to mix them up a bit and go for a captain. Obviously, they can stay in your team for several game weeks as well. But that may not be the case next season. It may not be. So remember the season when Suarez was captainable every week. Well, your gains and your losses were due to your other 10 players and what you did with them and getting differentials. So it was actually quite a fun season for that, because you just have to ignore your 11th player, because that's Suarez and he's going to get you 40 points every week. And it was the rest of them to do. So it's about adapting really to that. So for me, it's, That's what it's all about. It's about turning, for me, those average game weeks into good game weeks. So it's a good question from Ian there, because my answer's 1.
Short answer 3, long answer.
Yeah, there's always a long answer. Yeah.
What about you, Az? You also had a few 17k.
Well, I had three under 100,000. They all came post lockdown. So that sums up.
Sterling captain, right?
Yeah, so Sterling captain twice, and my bench boost on the unlimited transfers was key for me. I was looking, but 3. I thought you think that isn't really that. I mean, I finished 19,000, only had 3 like that. I was chatting to Joshua Ball, who came second overall last week, and I just checked his team, and he's had 3 as well. So he came second in the world, and he only had 3 game week ranks under 100,000.
I think I remember someone talking about this before. As long as you're, I think inside the top million, I think for a game week, someone was saying before, that's kind of all you need. As long as you can do that consistently, it's when you start having like 5-6 million game week ranks, that's when it really starts to hurt you. So I don't think you necessarily need loads.
Yeah, I mean, also captains. I had a look on FPL Statistico, and also Live FPL is another good tool to have a look at. So my total captain points was 461, which isn't much. If I'd have captained my vice captain, I'd have about 117 points more, and I'd have got a top 10k finish. So it's that simple. It's that simple. If I'd have just simply captained my vice captain more, who was very often De Bruyne, I would have got a top 10k finish, and I'd be sitting here, what a marvellous season it was. That simple move there. So if I'd have captained my highest player, I'd have had 500 points more. Now that's hard to nail your highest player every single week for 38 game weeks. But if I had, I'd have won the whole thing by 200 points clear. So I had the players and I had good captains. I just picked the wrong ones. I put and so that is a lesson to learn, I think. Pay attention to your captains. They're really, really important. And also bench points as well. So there's less need with 5. I think we've got a question about 5 subs coming up. But there's going to be less need for benches, because there's more chance that your player will come on if they're being benched in real life. So the other 2 can be cheap as chips. I benched 335 points this season, gone. And I'm hoping that is going to be much, much reduced coming up. So, we've got another question here. Reclassification. Who wants to handle this? Maximus Bonimus Pontimus has asked this.
Yeah, I'll take it. So We talk about this every year. It's players playing. I mean, it's pretty much the best thing in FPL is when you manage to land a player who's playing out of position. So the key ones this year, obviously Martial, playing as the main striker for United. Would he be a forward next year? You would have thought so, without a doubt. Lundstrom, who should never have been classified as defender anyway, he's surely going to move to midfield. But then you've got other ones, which is strikers moving to kind of like Salah type positions on the wing. They kind of still are a forward, but they're also a midfielder. They're a bit trickier to kind of classify right. So someone like Rashford, is he going to move to be a midfielder? And Greenwood, are they going to move? Because they are forwards, but they're not playing as forwards. Yeah. And the key one is Aubameyang, because Aubameyang is a striker. Like, you know, if he could pick his position, I'm sure he'd be the main striker for Arsenal. But he plays on almost on the wing because he wants to help out the team. But you know, would they really move Rashford, Greenwood, and Aubameyang to classify them as midfielders when they're not really midfielders? I think they should, because if Salah's a midfielder and Mane's a midfielder, Aubameyang's a midfielder because they play such similar positions. But I don't know if they will. But Andy, what do you think about reclassification?
I think Rashford and Greenwood 100% will move to midfielders. The thing with FPL is they kind of have a pattern, which is wherever they play the most in that season, especially if they play it to the back end of the season, they tend to get moved. So I think there's no justification for Rashford not being a midfielder. Greenwood's a little bit of a different one because he's come in because we don't have another right winger. Because, you know, in the summer, let's say we buy Sancho, Greenwood's probably going to move back to being a backup striker and just not even being in the first 11. So it's a bit more difficult to call on. But I still think he's going to get made a midfielder based on how
that's subjective,
before,
right? That's not based on his positioning. That would be based on a call that he probably will move further up the pitch with other signings.
Well, he is a backup striker, isn't he? He's only playing on that right, and he can play there, as we've seen. But yeah, he'll be moved. If I had to bet money now, Rashford, Greenwood, 100% midfielders next year. I think it's a bit of a weird one because, like I said, if we get another right winger, he'll suddenly become probably a backup striker for the most part for us. I don't think it's a huge concern if that happens from an FPL point of view. Aubameyang's a bit more of a difficult one because I agree. You think of him, you think he's a centre forward who doesn't get played centre forward for whatever reason. But I think it's hard to justify not changing him to a midfielder this year. He's played 20 times on the wing and only 14 centre forward. And most of the wing games have come in the latter half of the season. So I would not be surprised. I think he would be the weirdest one out of all the changes to be changed to a midfielder. But unless they make overhauls to how the positioning is done, it's hard to justify forward, I think, for next year.
He wasn't changed this year, though. He wasn't changed this year.
He played the centre forward more often last year. The difference this year, he's played left wing or right wing more often than he played centre forward.
And what about Salah? When Salah was pretty much playing as a centre forward, it wasn't this season. I think it was maybe the season before last. He was playing as a striker for a lot of the season, and there was talk about him getting moved up to be a forward, but they didn't do it. And I kind of feel like that was the time to do it, right? Because if they weren't going to do it then, I don't think anything's really changed dramatically since then. So I find him strange as a midfielder, Salah.
I mean, there's two conversations to have, isn't there? Which we probably haven't got time to get into. Is should they change these? Should they change players like Salah and Mane, who are essentially forwards? They just happen to line up on the team sheet as in wide positions, but they barely stay there. Should they be forwards, and do they play as forwards? Like just that's how FPL usually does it. We know that, right? If they line up as a right winger, it doesn't matter if they play as a striker during the game. They are a right winger. Like Salah's just not going to move, and I think that's why Aubameyang will get a midfielder position. I don't think Salah played enough at centre forward. Basically,
the trouble is the pool of players that you'd have to pick from being a forward. I mean, you think every team will have one main striker, and that'll be it, because everyone plays with one striker these days, except for Burnley. So you might have Wood and Vidra to choose from. But everyone else plays with one striker. So you're moving Aubameyang, Martial, Greenwood, everyone to midfielders. The midfielder pool is already huge, and the strikers just die out. I don't know. It's a strange. They've got to kind of keep it a bit balanced, so you can actually build a squad.
You could go the other way. So I'm going to mention the Sky game here because it's about classification, and everyone's a striker in that game. Salah, Mane, Sterling, everyone, the whole lot. Everyone's a striker forwards, and the midfield is like Jack Grealish basically. Kevin De Bruyne is like the good one. and then you're messing around with Sarr and Jack Grealish. So you don't want to go too far the other way because that hasn't been ultimately healthy. Because it's really hard to get all of those strikers into 3 positions, and you're struggling to get 5 midfielders. But at the same time, you don't want to go the other way as well. You don't want to have hardly any strikers to choose from. And the problem you have is that the game, increasingly teams, for years now have been 3 up top. The striker is like a Firmino or a Giroud, and they're making space and they're allowing the actual goal scorers, your Salah, your Mane, your Eden Hazard. These are the types of players that are coming in. Aubameyang from the wing and scoring. And I think it's too complicated for people, I think, for everyone playing to start reclassifying, like to have like strikers, wingers, midfielders. That's too much complication for the game as well. But it does make sense. If Salah and Mane are midfielders, Aubameyang should be 2. And if he isn't, then I think
they've set a precedent, basically.
Questions will be asked. If Aubameyang is a forward, then Salah and Mane must be forwards too.
I think it's stupid though when you think about midfielders getting a clean sheet point and an extra point for a goal, that Aubameyang, like Sterling, Salah, Mane all benefit from the same things as someone like Danny Drinkwater would get, or it just seemed like their role in the team is to score goals, so they should be classified as forwards. I think they should move a lot of the attacking wingers up to the forward point to give them more option, because it's pathetic. So many midfielders and so few strikers. Yeah. I think just reclassify the lot of them. Anyone that plays in an attacking position shouldn't get a clean sheet point for a start. They should be up front and getting less points for goals, because that's their job.
But that's what they did in the Sky game, and we're all there going, oh God, I've got to get Jack Grealish and Sarr in. Because basically Kevin De Bruyne is the only one to get.
That's the thing. If you move all these players forward, there would just be less players for midfield.
I've got one crazy suggestion for you. What if they let you pick? So say Aubameyang, you could play midfield or up front.
I've suggested this before because Dugout do that. Yeah. For certain players where they're like Aubameyang's and Sterling, you can play them as a forward, but you only get the 4 points plus the extra bonus points. Yeah. Or you play them as a mid, you get the clean sheet. Problem is, it's never going to happen, is it? Because it's too complicated things more.
I thought I'd come up with a great idea there. It's already been done. That's typical.
It's a good idea, though.
There are a couple of midfielders that are going to change the forwards, though, to add a few more in, which would be Richarlison. He'll be a forward next year. And Antonio as well. Yeah. I think he would have to be changed from midfielder to forward.
And of course, Chelsea are going to have a bit more choice as well. Werner's going to be coming. I'm quite interested in who's going to be the new Lundstrom. See, Lundstrom, 4 million defender, happens to be an attacking central defender, a central midfielder rather. So we're looking for that really. Here's a possibility: Dallas at Leeds could be that person. He's been played as a fullback, I understand, but he's a winger basically. So that's what you're looking for. So he could be listed defender. And if he's, Leeds price, that would be amazing. But a 5.5 midfielder, nah, less so. So it's a question of looking out for those kinds of ones. We're always in the search of the new Lundstrom, really. Quick question here from General Zod and Trust John as well. So there's 2 different people here. Both asked about, will 5 subs impact our squads next season? I think it will. What do you reckon? This 5 subs thing, is it going to be an issue for us?
I can tell you how many times I've had to use my bench since lockdown and the 5 subs, and it's 0. I mean, maybe I can't tell you exactly. It seems like 0. Maybe it's 1 or 2 or something. It's a tiny number. Yeah. It does definitely seem to me that your bench is much less important with 5 subs. I think it also makes Man City a lot more attractive as options, because I think you can see the damage that someone like Mahrez can do if they come on at 45 minutes. Sterling got a double-digit point off the bench. They're coming on against tired legs. He's freshening up the team. It's not necessarily a disadvantage for that team because of the quality that can come on. So I think it's good. It's good in that way. So that's my tactic. I'm just I always have a cheap bench anyway, but I think the bench is even less important because I think it's going to be even rarer for you to end up having to use them. I think what will be interesting though is you've got a team, someone like Burnley, who've got basically no bench, so they're less likely to rotate and take off players like Chris Wood and things because of how small their squad is. So actually, the smaller squad teams do become a bit more attractive because they might get 90, whereas teams with a bigger squad might only get 60, 70 minutes. So there's that factor to bring into it. But yeah, I don't think it's going to change things too much personally. I think I just think I'm going to worry less about City and just accept that I might only get 30 minutes, but they could still do damage at that time.
Yeah, Andy, what do you reckon? Same.
I'm hoping it doesn't get brought in. I think it probably will, but I'm hoping they decide against it, because I just don't see them for it for a start. But I guess that's another conversation. I kind of agree. I already go for a cheap bench anyway, cheapest in every position, like a 4.5 million midfielder, etc. I think the only difference I might do this year is just not worry about if I can't get a 4 million playing defender, I'll just get a 4 million non-playing defender. I just think that even during a normal season when there's only 3 subs, it's so rare you need your whole bench. We talked about this on a Scoutcast during lockdown with Neil, and he was saying the same thing. It's so rare you go to even 2 or 3 players deep on your bench. And I was thinking about it as well. Even if you do, let's say it happens once in 10 weeks, how many points have you gained by not having that money on the bench and having it in your main 11? To the point where, you might get a 1-pointer or a 0-pointer and just play with 10 players, and it'll be annoying for that week, but you've probably benefited a lot in the previous week. So, yeah, I think cheap bench, 1 playing player, might be it for me.
But what it gains you a good bench is flexibility to be able to move your team. So if you've got a player with a bad fixture and you've got a decent bench player, like Wan-Bissaka at 4 million, Palace have got a home game against Norwich or whatever, and you swap out Maguire, who's away at City. Like, at least having playing players for different teams gives you that ability to be a bit more.
I do agree. Maybe for defence, if I could get a few cheap players, but I think for my main attackers and stuff, I hate setting up where I can rotate them. I just set and forget them, and if I want to change them, I'll just transfer them. So it's something to consider for defence. But obviously, like everything for next season, it's going to depend on prices, isn't it? So. Yeah. I probably won't go deep on the bench.
It's good you brought up that last Scoutcast that we had with Neil, talking about benches, and it did make me think, and it did come back to me for lockdown, and it was really annoying that I had this bench boost to play because I needed to beef up my bench, and it was the last thing I wanted to do. I wanted to get loads of cheap in there, and that's why I'm going to go for much more this season. I remember a season, there was a guy, do you remember, was it Shane Ferguson at Newcastle? It was a 4 million midfielder. That's a rare beast. He never played. I think he played a minute or something. And I remember people getting him in and I was saying, why are you doing that? You're reducing your pool of players to 14 instead of 15. You're at a disadvantage. Well, they all shot up into the top 100 in the rankings, and they were proved right because they never actually needed that, and they could invest that money. And if, as what is probably going to happen next season, a lot of the players that we want are going to be more expensive. Fernandes isn't going to be that cheap again. The Chelsea midfielders are not going to be that cheap again. Which brings us on to the next question, Andy. We've got a question on that, haven't we, about inflated prices from FPL Costanza, I believe.
Yeah, basically, will we get this year gems at inflated prices? He's saying Trent could be 9 to 10 million pounds. I don't think he's going to be that high, to be honest. I know he just scored 200 points, but I just don't see it. But we'll see. De Bruyne 11.5. Could Bruno be 11? Is what they're saying in the question. I guess this comes around every single year. People will see the teams that the prices FPL launches again, and they will panic because they can't make the team they've just ended with. It happens every year, and everyone will say how difficult it is this year, and yet we'll have to just find the gems. And as the season goes on, we find those cheaper gems, which let's get the bigger hitters. It's a big old cycle as FPL. So I guess it's not really. Will they be inflated? So I guess some of the players mentioned, like what do you think? Like Bruno obviously came in at 8 million?
8.5 million. He'll
definitely not going to be 8 next year. What do you think he's going to go up to?
9.5.
And will he still be worth it?
9.5, 10.
Dream on. He's going to be way more than that.
Maybe
9.5,
10.5, 11, whatever. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe 11 minimum.
Manchester United fans are so
11
prominent in the effective ownership, and one of the lessons I've learned is to perhaps you can get those high effective ownership players as a good shield. But they're really annoying to own because if you don't captain them, you're going to lose points because their ownership's so massive. But instead of those types of players, because I think that happens every year, players that do well will go up in price. That's just the way it is. That's what's FPL. I'm more interested in the players that have dropped in price, and I'm more interested in the low price players. So the trick is to find those bargains. So yeah, I've done a little bit of research on this one. So the price drop gems. Well, there's some rubbish players in here, but there's some potential gems in this list. These good start. Samata. Right, ignore that one. So these are the players that have lost the most value this year. So, and these are the players, maybe through injury, it may be through lack of form, it may be they had a rubbish manager, who knows. There's lots of reasons to have. So for Ryan Fraser, we know what a creative little player he is, but Bournemouth just ripped him up and said no thanks last season, and then he ended up ripping Bournemouth up and saying no thanks. So wherever he ends up, 6.8 million he came to. What will his price be wherever he ends up next season? Pay attention to it because he could be a low price gem. Yarmolenko at West Ham, another bargain. Lost 0.8 in value. He's got quite a high ceiling, this lad. Striker Keane at Everton, if he stays, could he be resurgent? He's lost 0.7 million this year. He's going to be cheap. How much game time will Is it Podence or Podence? Wolves, 4.9. He finished the season. He dropped 0.6. Callum Wilson, Bournemouth have gone down. Where will Callum Wilson end up? How much will he be? These are the players I'm looking at in terms of price. And every season, I remember one season where Stephen Ireland at Man City had an amazing season. I don't know if you remember that. And he started off at something like 6 million or something. And he came back the next season at 8.5. And he hardly did anything. And there was injuries and these types of things. So it shows that these inflated prices players, some of them will be inflated, so you can watch out for them. But I think watch out for the little bargains.
I'm surprised Pepe's not on there, because Pepe surely has got something about him to make them pay 75 million for him. If he comes in at 7.5 next year, and Arteta's made some decent signings.
Yeah.
I think Harry Kane might have been due a price drop as well if he hadn't just scored 7 goals since lockdown. That was a bit annoying, I think, because he was 11. I reckon he could have come down to like a 10.5. Here's a couple of questions for you. First one, what price will Bruno Fernandes be?
11 million. Easy.
Okay, second follow-up question. Will he be worth that, right? Here's some stats for you. So since game week 25, 13 or 14 game week that is, he's got 16 attacking returns, 8 goals, 8 assists. Right, those goals have come from a non-penalty XG of 3.03. So penalty, you can't discount penalties obviously because Man United do get a lot. Probably not as many as this year, but they'll probably still get a lot. And then 8 assists from 2.34 expected assists. I don't know if you've seen that video that's going around. There's quite a few passes where then Martial's got a banging, a cracking shot. So if he is 11, do you think he's worth it?
I mean, the one thing with Fernandes is you've got to remember that he's been absolutely insane post-lockdown, but he had the easiest run of fixtures I think any player could ever have. Like just one after another, and it helped United because their confidence was sky high. And then, he got tired and his output did drop. So he went from 3 lots of 15s down to 5, 6, 1. So lucky with that 11-point haul against Leicester. Like just so lucky. Was so lethargic. It was a great benefit, but so lethargic in that game in general. So I don't think there's no chance of him keeping up that kind of level of return that we've seen, because I don't think any player is capable of doing it. I think United are gonna. We saw that United's squad needs adding to, and their first team squad is fantastic, but the fringe players just aren't as good. So, I do worry a bit about things like that. But I think he is so involved in everything United do that I think 11 million would be a fair price for him, and I think you can make a good case for including him in it. So I think good option.
Here's one more then for you. I'll come to you again, Az, but then Joe, you can answer the same question. Trent Alexander-Arnold. Well, I've seen crazy suggestions that people are willing to pay whatever for this guy. 9 and 11, well, no, maybe not 11 million. What is the max you would pay for him?
I'd pay 9 million for him.
Really?
I'd pay 9 million for him because he's not a defender. He is a 9 million easy midfielder. Like he's plays for Liverpool, the best defensive team in the league. Anyway, he's on all the set pieces apart from penalties. He gets assists from open play. He scores occasionally from open play, and he gets the clean sheet points. And he's bonus magnet. He's literally the complete player, no matter what position he's in.
And he scored less points than Robertson did last year. I cannot believe people really think he's going to be 9 million. I think that's.
I don't think he'd be 9 million.
I think
You asked me
you
what
would pay 9
I'd pay.
million.
I would pay 9 for him. Yeah.
I think the highest we've had is 8 million, isn't it? With Baines and Vidic.
Yeah,
I think we're 8
Baines
million.
and Vidic,
and
yeah.
I'd potentially pay that, but the answer to that question is how much is Robertson and how much is Van Dijk? Because if they are cheaper than Trent Alexander-Arnold, I will get them instead. And it depends how much cheaper they are, because they offer assist and goal threat, and they offer security of starts. But also, Liverpool aren't going to be as secure starters, because in the cup competitions, their talented B team, their youth team, has been coming through, and we're going to see them being played more. Klopp will trust them more in matches. So in an easy game, like for example against Newcastle or whoever, these games you want them to play in. Well, if there's got Chelsea coming up or Arsenal, they're probably going to play in those matches, and you really want them against the easy side. So I will perhaps go for Van Dijk more for security of starts, goal threat, depending on the prices. But
I don't think starts as a worry. I worried about that last year, and that kind of hurt me.
No. What I'm saying is, in terms of the prices. So, say Van Dijk is 6.5, and say Trent is 8. I'm getting Van Dijk.
Trent's worth it. Of course, he's worth it.
I honestly think. I don't think that's such an easy decision. I probably would still go for Trent, but I don't know. I just think 8. The problem is, I know the comparison straight away will always come down to you got to compare him to the midfielder, which I get, but you've also got to compare that cheap midfielder that you're not able to get because you've paid for Trent versus the cheap defender who isn't going to keep up with Trent. There's always that combo. It's 8 million Trent plus maybe 6 million mid,
it's where you're
or
spending
6
that
million
extra.
defender plus 8 million mid. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not saying people shouldn't buy him for 8 million because he just scored 200 points. But he scored less than Robertson scored last year.
This has been the season.
No one's clamouring to get Robertson for 8 million.
Yeah, this is the season of the bargain. And next season is going to be the season of the premiums. Everyone's going to be more expensive. We want them all. And I'm going to want a 1.5 million. And if I'm getting, I'd be happy with Van Dijk over Alexander-Arnold. If I could get, say, Harry Kane, and he's still on form, against, I don't know, Giroud. I don't know. I'm trying to speculate who would be a sort of a 9 million-ish striker that I don't particularly want. But we've had some last question here. FPL Knuckles as do you want to? This is quite a nice one to end with. So
yeah. So making FPL fun. So we all sit here arguing about Trent and how much money it is and stuff, and you can lose sight a little bit of we do actually play this for fun. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that, but that is the general idea of it. So FPL Knuckles had a few ideas of what he's going to do to make FPL more fun next year. And some of these I really like. So pick players who have fixtures in every day of the week. So this is definitely a psychological thing. I think it can kind of... I mean, I've based captain decisions on a player playing on a Monday night. I've based captain decisions on a player who's playing in the first game, and I don't want to do that. It's not always a sensible strategy in terms of your team and what you should be doing, but it does give you that psychological boost that something good could happen at the end of the week that helps you. I'm not too sure on that one because I do find that say I'm between Salah and Aguero and I choose to go for Salah, even though he's got a worse game, he's playing on the Monday night, and then Aguero gets a hat trick. That's ruined my weekend. And Salah, and then I'm so my whole life is determined by whether Salah scores or outscores Aguero in that game, and I don't know. I find that just as stressful. I think so. I'm not too sure on that one. But some of the other ones, if you're captain blanks, treat yourself to a takeaway or a nice meal out that day, which is nice. A bit of self-care.
I don't need a captain blank.
Oh my God, I'm going to be out of pocket and massive.
We're going to be dining out every week. Create a co-op FPL tab league on an Excel document where you combine the points of you and one of your friends, so you're kind of in it together. This one, watch the game with your captain and go onto the exercise bike. You can only get off when your captain returns. Worst case scenario, you get fit.
I'm going to have legs like Jack Grealish by the end of the season.
Yeah. You like these, Andy? Have you got anything you're going to do to make FPL a bit more fun next year?
No. I think I like it anyway. I don't know, picking players on every game. I try not to make my decisions based upon when people are playing. I hate this don't captain a player in the opening fixture. I know why people don't like doing it, but I feel like you should make the decision based on the best fixture and stuff. So Yeah, I treat myself to a takeaway regardless of what the captaincy is. To be honest, getting on the exercise bike, I kind of like that though. Only when my captain returns, but I feel like I'll be on there for an hour and a half every single week. So yeah, we'll get fit at least. So yeah, I think it's cool that people do these kind of things. I don't know. I know it's a boring answer, but just don't pick players based on when they're playing. Because it goes the other way. You wait all that time for that Monday night fixture, all that hope, and then they blank, and you've waited all that time for nothing. It's just like an anti-climax. So yeah, don't pick based on days.
I think I like the one about the going for the meal out, because I think one of the key things to help your enjoyment is when you're starting to feel bogged down by all this, just take a step back from Twitter. Don't go on social media. You don't need to see everyone's great scores. You don't need to just turn off from it as best you can and try. And I know it's easier said than done, but at least doing something like that can kind of take your mind off it, because we do all get too invested in this game. And I think sometimes you do just need to go, okay, it was a rubbish week. Let's just forget about that. I'll come back to it in a couple of days when my head's a bit clearer. Let's go and do something fun to take my mind off it.
I would say, instead of waiting until the FPL's gone bad and then treating yourself to meal out, just turn it off before you find that out and just go and enjoy the weekend. And if it affects you that much, turn off social media and the games before the game week starts, and then come back to it a couple of days later when you can watch all the stuff at one go. You can see all the points in one go. And then just react. I think you're probably more likely, yeah, exactly, the match day challenge. You're more likely to react badly, I think, when you're watching it and it's going badly as you go. You're going to get more and more annoyed. So yeah, maybe rather than doing that, just go and do it straight away. Go and treat yourself before you see what the score is.
At least the highlights are over with quickly, and the pain is shortened. Joe, what are you going to do to make FPL more fun next year?
I always find it quite fun, but I back all of those suggestions. Anything like that to make it more fun is good. I sort of do the everyday player rule. If you are going to do that, a handy tip, because the Monday night fixtures tend to be a bit rubbish. It tends to be the sort of, well, back in the old days, Burnley v Stoke, and you're like, why am I watching this? Well, if you've got a Stoke defender or Burnley defender, that's why you can watch it. And so I'm not suggesting get their captain there, the key player or anything, but getting a goalkeeper or defender in, I quite like having that. And I do like to stay engaged. I haven't liked lockdown at the moment, where I think a couple of weeks where you can make your transfers once a week, once every 7 days, but you've got matches almost every day. And there was 2 or 3 days where I just didn't have anyone playing, and it was just like, and there weren't teams I was particularly interested in. So I was watching a bit, but not really, and it did spoil my engagement a bit. But if I'd have had a defender from one of those boring teams, like, I don't know, let's say Van Aanholt hadn't got injured, but if I had a Van Aanholt for Palace and they've got a really boring match, that's quite exciting, having Van Aanholt in, and those kind of things help. But yeah, no, I think it's really good. We've got to look after our mental health with those things, and it's really important.
The only one I'd add just is I think you get the most enjoyment from this game when you follow your own decision making, and you pick players based on that you think they're going to do well based on whatever it is, stats, eye test, gut feel, this kind of thing. So like for me, getting in Sterling over Salah changed my season. It's left me with a really good feeling at the end of this. Okay, it could have backfired, but at least I kind of did what I wanted to do and didn't just get Salah because that's what everyone else was doing. So I know sometimes you can make a decision like that and it backfires, but you just got to try and remember the reason why you did it. And if there is it wasn't a bad decision, just the outcome is not in your favour, but the decision itself was the right one. You just got to try and drum that into your head. Just because the outcome isn't right doesn't mean it was a bad decision.
Okay, now we've hit the hour and a half mark. It's been a really long Scoutcast, but it has been a justifiably long one, because it's been a justifiably long season to go over. Lots there. So I just wanted to end with, it's not a question, it's a comment really. It was from Shirtless, who has asked the question earlier, but he put a comment up on Fantasy Football Scouts forum today, which was he said that my dad passed on just as we went into the restart on the 13th of June after several months of bad health following a decade of fighting cancer. As well as my dad, he was my business partner as well. To say life has been turned upside down would be an understatement. He goes on, my free hit Game Week 30 plus team was a last minute cobbling together affair after a few difficult weeks. His dad always took an interest in his FPL and football in general, and he was a Saints fan and a regular attender there until recent years. In the end, I didn't quite nail a top 1k finish for my dad, but I'm sure he'd be pleased with my finish of 2,620. and for Saints being safe with games to spare. So thanks for everything, Dad. And I think that's a fitting message to end on in this really tricky season, a really tricky year for lots of people. But hopefully, a message of hope there to remember the positives in life, like some wonderful memories of some loved ones there. So thanks, Shirtless, for those comments that you left today. Just finally, before we go, remember all the stats, season ticker, etc. Fantasy Football Scout members area, please do sign up. Invaluable information, all the usual stuff. Press like, subscribe, all of those things. If you've liked and enjoyed the episode, press like, and remember subscribe to keep up to date with our latest videos and podcasts. Got plenty of those coming next season. Me and Az doing Scoutcast. Andy, you're doing million videos every day and there's going to be loads and loads of video and podcast content, I'm sure, and we'll have more details of that during the summer, but in the meantime, it's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye
Goodbye
all.